Throughout his life, Gottfried Leibniz, one of the greatest philosophers and mathematicians, who discovered the metaphysical and mathematical harmony which underlies reality in the forms of both monadology and infinitesimal calculus, cherished the hope of discovering a kind of generalized mathematics, which he called characteristica universalis. If we had it, he said, we could reason in metaphysics and morals just as we do now in geometry and analysis. There would be no need for disputation between philosophers any more than there would between accountants. We'd have this universal and formal language able to express mathematical, scientific, and metaphysical concepts.
He found a system of analysis that, again, he thought had been deliberately suppressed.
Wow.
And the real kicker for me was, one of my favorite fellows, and in fact my favorite fellow in that little trinity of mathematicians, Gottfried Leibniz.
Leibniz, yeah.
Leibniz was an extraordinary man because he appreciated that not only did one have to have the right technique, one had to have the right symbolization of it. So he devoted much of his mathematical study to coming up with apt symbols of what he was talking about. So he thought that the ancients had a technique of analysis that had either been lost or deliberately suppressed. But then he went on to say,
I would argue that the CTMU actually fills Leibniz's definition of a characteristica universalis. So this is what he was seeking after, and it was fulfilled by Chris Langen. There are three characteristics which I see as needed by such a system. Number one, it unites all of the languages as relands of the same structure. So you can have this international auxiliary language, connects all of them and shows that they have the same fundamental structure. This connects to Wittgenstein's philosophy of language, is that what we're doing in language is we have a concept and we're trying to express that to another person. So what language is at its fundament is not, words or little breaths, etc., which make little sound waves. But what it is, its fundamental essence is that concept. It is the extensional world, and so it connects the language to its universe, and thus can express all present knowledge. Nothing is lost in the CTMU.
But then he went on to say some things that were very, to me, hugely important. He said that it appears that they had, first of all, a calculus, in other words, a formally explicit symbolic algebraic type of system to perform this analysis. And then secondly, he also stated very explicitly that it appeared to him that this calculus had nothing to do with numbers. And thirdly, that they obtained their results by a sort of imitation of calculation. And then finally, this is Leibniz after all that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And finally he says, it appears to me that this system has been suppressed, that they knew this system and used it to analyze all of their mathematical problems.
We got it. And 3, it serves as an instrument of discovery and demonstration because it relates model, theory, and universe. In the past, we can determine things empirically. We can, do some experiments, but we can't actually understand how the theory in our mind, the concepts and ideas, etc., relate to the outside universe. We need this fundamental ontology which relates language and universe, which says that the universe is a language which creates the reality it describes. The only reason our language is useful to describe the universe is because of the mapping between the inner structure of the universe is fundamentally linguistic.
And I thought, whoa, because what it appeared to me at that point was what all three men may have been talking about is what I've been calling this topological metaphor of the medium, or in some cases analogical calculus. So, I was kind of dumbfounded, Bernard. The thing that caught my eye when he said that that this was a calculus without numbers and they achieved their results by an imitation of calculating, the first thing I thought of was Noam Chomsky.
Yeah.
Because, if you look at Noam Chomsky's transformational generative grammar,
right,
what you have there is precisely a symbolic calculus that is doing formal processes, but they're totally unrelated to numbers.
So like Noam Chomsky's theory of generative grammar, the specific instantiations of objects and their descriptions in reality must be understood as a transformation on this underlying syntax from which an infinite expansive potential is made manifest. And then the foundational unit are not particles or waves or even strings, but syntactic operators, the beings which can actually transform the syntax of reality. And this happens at 3 levels. Transforming the global syntax of reality in order to achieve spatial extension and instantiate the higher spiritual meaning. And so it's arranging point particles according to this teleology. The meaning of creation is the creation of meaning.
It would allow you, if you grasped it in all of its fullness, it would allow you to take, all of those library shelves full of grimoires and ritual magic and, magical how to do it cookbooks, and just throw them away, because you'd have the key, the formally explicit grammar in the Chomskyan sense, rather than these informally explicit grammars or grimoires, as they're called. You'd have the basis of them, and therefore you wouldn't need them. So I do think that there are people out there seeking this, that know that there's something fundamental that they've been missing. The essence of the metaphor, again, is it's analogical in nature, and that means, if you want to look at it yet another way, it's a mapping function in topology from one context to another. And now let's put analytical overlay over the term context. It's one discipline to another.
This is why Leibniz actually called his Characteristica Universalis an alphabet of human thought. That these concepts, these various metaphysical paradigms, can all be expressed in terms of our cognition. This is exactly what Chris Langan says in his metaformal system. Leibniz actually basically discovered the Characteristica Universalis in the 17th century, and essentially it's been redacted, it's been hidden by the people who are in charge of his records. And what Gödel is saying is that Leibniz basically discovered the CTMU in the 17th century. If that's true, that's wild. Definitely something in those letters and manuscripts, etc. So I hope eventually those are released.
So in other words, you can detect analogical similarities. This is why Bernstein's lectures are so hugely important, in my opinion, because he approached the whole thing from an analogical point of view,
Right.
trying to point out not only similarities but discrete and formally specifiable similarities between the functions of natural language and the functions of music, or the rhetorical tropies of natural language and similar structures that appear in music.
I can tell you,
very interdisciplinary.
Sure, and I can tell you from speaking multiple languages, living in a foreign country, one of the hardest things to do is one, when you're teaching someone English, to teach them the tonal range that transfers as much information as the words do.
Right.
And it's when you're learning another language, you sound flat to other people because you're unable to get the it's almost like a sing-song that underrides, like a subcarrier wave, that's underwriting the language and carrying all this information with it.
Right.
And this is, I guess, pretty much related to what we're on about here.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially with Chomsky, that's definitely part of his deal.
Oh yes, absolutely.
The unspoken grammar.
But anyway, this was just a fun conceptual video. Let the light shine forth the darkness. May the peace of our Father in heaven be upon you. Like and subscribe. Peace.